You have to do it. Okay.
Okay, got it. Hello, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear me? Hello, testing. So,
This will be the B2 camera.
Okay.
And the flag is back here, everybody.
Okay. As far as I know. Haven't heard otherwise. Hello. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I bought no Girl Scout. She didn't sell them.
Well, Girl Scout she's already
They're not out yet.
No, so you can candy now, you candy right before Christmas, and then you do Girl Scout cookies, they start. Late January, February.
Make sure to hit me up.
Oh wow, you're like so hard in Yeah, like chain smoking your face. Yeah. We're roughly about that. Yeah, I remember Alana started like doing this logical sort of progression of questions. And then I just was like, in my head, like,
Hello.
and then she just stopped. And I think it was almost like she just wanted to, even though like it was a part of her, she just didn't want to like
We'll be in the meeting. The meeting's a little bit crowded right now.
Yeah, he's still.
So, yeah, I would just follow. It's in the band room. It's room number 121. This will be public first, and then we'll do executive. All right, thank you. Bye-bye. More chairs for people.
So Les, will you grab me the sign-in sheet right when we're about to start? I don't know if you want.
You get your timer.
Yeah.
just in case.
Or do you want,
Yeah, I
you can see if Francis wants to. I just need someone to watch the 3 minutes. As far as you know, Melissa's coming, right?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah, she
I'll
just
give her one.
responded to the times. The thing I just wanted to remind is just maybe this starts to get our staff members to say that. Now it's like to superintendent after he can give us concerns, or you can send us an email.
Yep. Yep.
I know at least one person's probably gonna do that.
I could figure out how to.
That's fine, he's got it. Just gonna let Melissa get settled and we'll start. Melissa, just let me know when you're ready. Melissa, are you good?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. And we will open with a salute to the flag, which is in this back corner for anyone who's looking. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's some seats over here, folks.
Okay. We will do our best. I can't read all the names, so I may have to help in some cases. Okay, Celeste, were there any agenda changes?
I did send through the addendum yesterday for the CPSU.
Yes. Everybody received that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we open our meetings with privilege of the floor and public comment. Before we go into public comment, I'll kind of go down the list. That's why we had you sign in, so I can make sure anyone who wanted to address the board has an opportunity to do so. I'm just going to read through the policy that applies to public comment. We appreciate your being here, but we want to keep it civil and respectful of all people. So all meetings of the Board of Education shall be conducted in public, and the public has the right to attend all such meetings. Public expression at such meetings is encouraged, and a specific portion of the agenda provides for members of the public to address the board. The period of the meeting is listed on the agenda as privilege of the floor. The purpose of allowing public to make statements during the meeting, is to allow for additional views on agenda topics to be heard and considered. This is not a time or place to register complaints about individuals or about items that have not been first addressed through proper channels, that is, with the closest to the issue, such as a teacher, building principal, the superintendent, or other appropriate party. Individuals making statements during privilege of the floor are expected to be courteous and respectful, modeling for our students how one can participate and have their voice heard in situations where there is agreement or disagreement with others' views. If members of the public have gone through proper channels and still wish to discuss a personnel matter with the board, they can submit their comments in writing to the board president, or they can request an executive session with the board. At its discretion, the board may invite visitors to its meetings to participate in board discussion in the matters of the agenda. The Board of Education reserves the right to enter into executive session as specified in Policy 1720, executive sessions. The public comment section is an opportunity for residents and residents only to address the Board of Education. This public expression should take place only in the portion of the agenda designated. This is usually at the beginning of each meeting, which it is now. Persons wishing to address the board shall indicate their desire to speak in advance on the sign-in sheet. In order to give everyone who wishes ample opportunity to speak, speakers should confine their comments to 3 minutes. The board will not address specific questions or comments, but may ask you for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual personnel or students should present their comments or concerns to the superintendent, who will share them with the board at the next executive session. So we will go ahead and open, I think, and I'm going to do my best to read the names, so I apologize. The first person that indicated they wanted to make public comment, I believe, is Craig. Okay.
My name is Craig Radford. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk. The reason why I'm here to talk quickly about the hot topic of COVID-19 and the wonderful healthy quarantining and trying to understand it as best as possible. I wanted to attend these meetings a couple times, but I haven't been here because quarantining hasn't affected me up until last week. So because it affected me, I felt like it's my opportunity now to come and talk about it. My daughter was quarantined due to an exposure. I'm a little upset because it took me a little bit of time to get some emails back on how my daughter was exposed, what a level of exposure she was at, and for how long. Just like everybody else that sits in this room, I have a lot of things that I do on the side as well as my career, so I don't have a lot of time to email. However, when it comes to my kids, I'm gonna make time. So I waited for emails back, and I did. I got prompt emails eventually stating that my daughter was in contact with somebody for 25 minutes on a rug, elbow to elbow. That's a prolonged exposure that's above the 15-minute threshold. I understand that. So if we have procedures in place, like I have procedures in place where I work for exposures, why is my daughter sitting next to somebody for a 25-minute exposure? That's like saying, I'm going to stick her next to somebody, whether they're positive or not, because we don't know, for 5 to 10 minutes, upwards of 15 minutes eating with their masks off. That would be an exposure for a prolonged period of time with a mask down, which would go to quarantine. That's one of my questions. What procedures are we following? It's a very fluid situation. I understand COVID-19 is very fluid. However, it's starting to affect the residents. It's starting to affect all of our children. I'm not sitting here, I can 100% with my work schedule be home with my child more than a lot of people can. I'm very fortunate with that. I do not use school as a resource for daycare. And I'm not saying that because everybody has different work schedules. My daughter needs to be in school so that she has proper socialization, the teacher who is teaching her directly, not through the channels of a laptop, which is great compared to what we've had in the past and trying to learn it all last year. What I'm going to end in is that one thing that's really starting to bother me, and take it for what it's worth, is that I don't need to be told how and what the channels are that if my daughter gets quarantined, how I can get her to not be quarantined. I don't need to be told in Parent Square, which, by the way, is a great app, thank you. I don't need to be told that if I decide one way that I can stop disruptive quarantines with my child is to get them vaccinated. I don't need to be educated. I've been educated. This community is educated. Everybody in the community, everybody around the country is educated. We all understand what the ages are available for quarantine, for vaccination status. We get it. I don't need to be reminded. I'm an adult. I can take care of my child. I will stop. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to move on, but that's one thing that's really starting to bother me. So
I appreciate you sharing your comments. Thank you. The next is Ben.
Hi, my name is Ben Author. I pretty much lived in Plainfield my whole entire life. My family's from here. My parents lived here. I hope my kids settle down here, raise their families here. Last couple weeks, month, I've seen some real inconsistencies as far as the quarantine's going between the elementary school and the high school. If you look at the number of kids that are affected for quarantines, if we're following the same procedures, you would think that the same number of kids per incident would be approximately the same. This is not happening. The thing that makes me really start to wonder is that 5 to 11-year-olds are being quarantined more than the high schoolers. I start to ask myself why that is, and then I see the propaganda and all the emails from the superintendent about to get around this disruptive quarantine, get your kid vaccinated. That is a political stance and an agenda that this school board should not be taking out. It's becoming a political football, and we should not be using our kids. We are told bullying is bad, yet the school district is bullying me and trying to vaccinate my kid. We as a school board and community need to start pushing back against Schenectady County. There's other counties or states that are doing things very differently. There's other counties that don't quarantine their classrooms. This mask mandate, on the front of the paper today, there's 3 counties around us that are not even honoring what the governor is saying. So we need to stop being painted in the same brush as Schenectady and Iskey and other big schools and put together a plan for Dwaynesburg. Present it to Schenectady County and say, this is the way we're going. Other counties are doing it. We are starting to push Schenectady County back. The plan needs to fit Dwaynesburg. Lastly, I'd like to just bring up last week in the New York Times, the Attorney General of the United States of America stated that the amount of suicide and mental health, anxiety, depression among adolescents and kids is going through the roof. The reason why is because we're quarantining them and putting them behind a laptop to try to learn. That's not how we learn. That's not, humans don't learn that way. So I ask the board, can we cut down on the propaganda and also start putting our kids first? Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Rebecca and Rob.
Thank you.
Hello.
Rob,
It's Rob, what's your last name?
what's that, Novitsky?
Novisky. Yes, sorry. Rob Novisky.
A couple days ago, our kids came home and notified us that there was an assembly. And they were speaking, basically, we don't know exactly, but because the kids' memories, they don't pay attention 100%, but one of the things that stuck out was they were instructed not to say Merry Christmas, which we find kind of shocking, really, because Merry Christmas is a universal term that's used all over the world. People celebrate Christmas, not in this country, but in all many countries. And we just thought that in order to be instructed not to say that, does Merry Christmas offend people? I mean, if you're offended by the term Merry Christmas, I hate to see you once you get out of school and get into the public, because if that offends you, that's going to be, not too good. And there was another thing was the equity was discussed too, the equity program. And we didn't agree with equity. We think equality is better. Like Martin Luther King says, judge people on the quality of the character, not the color of the skin. We believe equity is divisive, dividing people between races. And that's never happened in the school. We see people, we have kids, minority kids in the school. Like how many, we just wondered if there's a problem. That we don't see kids as minorities as majority. We see them as our friends. So we just didn't really agree with the equity program. I think everybody should. That's all.
Okay, thank you. No. The next person that indicated they would like to speak is Cliff Bradshaw.
I'm Cliff Bradshaw. I have two issues I want to discuss that haven't been brought up already. The first is my son was, he's been forced to vaccine, he's been forced to quarantine since last week. He had, I guess he was with somebody who was positive. The problem I have with that, it's not the forcing the vaccine, forcing the quarantine, it's forcing quarantine of unvaccinated children. And like the mayor spoke earlier, I agree with him. I think this is a political ploy to pressure our kids, almost a form of child abuse, to pressure our kids, to force them to just come home and say, Mom and Dad, I want to get vaccinated. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. And why aren't we quarantining our vaccinated children? Do you know that the Omicron vaccine, you've seen the stats on that? 79% of COVID positive Omicron are vaccinated people. 79%. So what are we doing? I mean, what kind of game is this? My son is suffering at home, but yet the vaccinated get to go to school. Just let them go to school. Let them be children. It doesn't make any sense unless it's a political ploy by the school, and it's disgusting. The other issue I have is the assembly. My son came home and said they told him not to say Christmas. I mean, come on. I mean, that's disgusting. It's sad. I mean, if you're going to have a gathering, you can gather all the kids together right before Christmas, tell them not to say Christmas. And then you're going to show a bingo card that has, put your friends' names on the bingo thing that says, if they're right-handed, left-handed, if they're, whatever, black, white, whatever. And then the 2 slides later, you're going to talk about bias, how we're all biased. That's critical race theory. I mean, if it's not full-fledged critical race theory, it's an open door to that, which we never had before. This is garbage. This stuff does not belong in our school system. It does not. Please take it out. Let my kid go to school. He's not a racist. We are not racist. We love everyone, every color, whatever. We're not racist. The families in this area are not. Don't try to call us something we're not. Take it out. Let our kids go to school. Let them learn. Let them go to school. You know, I mean, the mask is bad enough. I can't wear the stupid mask. The masks don't work. Come on, but my son does. He follows the rules, and yet he has to stay home. You know, because he's unvaccinated. What happens when he goes get the shot and you know, something happens to him? Because but you know what I'm saying? I mean, just this stuff doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
I don't.
I think we only have a couple left.
Is it Leonard?
Leonard and Shannon, am I reading it correctly? Okay. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Leonard Perez.
Hi, Leonard.
I'm here over at the CRT. You're gonna make these kids racist, is what you're gonna do. You're telling the white kids that they're racist because of the color of their skin. What happened in colorblind society? You care about the color of their skin all of a sudden now? You're telling me that because a kid's got different colored skin, that they're going to be, need to be helped and all these other things? That's racism in itself. It shouldn't matter what the color of your skin is. It shouldn't matter any of this stuff. I understand the poor kid needs a little help. I get that. Other than that, it shouldn't matter with any of this stuff. You guys are creating the problem. You guys, by bringing this into the school, you're creating the problem. The problem's not even here. You're making it. I don't even understand. I mean, I thought we were here to teach the kids reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the other things. The other stuff should be left at home. You guys shouldn't be sticking your nose in the other stuff's business. You got no right to be teaching them CRT. Because all you're going to do, it's conquer and divide. And that's what they're doing. They're separating the races and causing all this problem, and it doesn't even exist. Not, at least not in this area. And you're bringing it up, and you're starting and stirring the pot. Is that what you want? I don't even get it. This is ridiculous.
See, one more indicated, Jason Myers, is that correct? Okay.
Jason Myers. A couple things that have already been mentioned, the whole, the Merry Christmas issue. You know, for anybody to be offended at somebody saying Merry Christmas, I just really have one thing to say about that. Suck it up. I mean, no one's ever been offended, but I mean, I'm not offended by anybody who wants to say Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Ramadan, whatever. You know, if they want to share their holidays, that's fine. If anybody else wants to share their holiday, I don't see where the big problem is here. It's, you know, it's Merry Christmas. Let it go. The other thing is about the critical race theory. I don't exactly know if this is where we're going with the critical race theory, with the whole equity thing. I'm not a big equity guy. It's equals socialism. I'm not socialism. We don't live in a socialist world. We live in a capitalist world. You have to work a little bit harder if you want things. I mean, if we're going to have equity, maybe the custodians get paid the same amount as the superintendent does. I don't think that's going to work. The superintendent went to school. He got a doctor. He's a doctor. He worked hard. He achieved, and he got what he gets. So, the critical race theory thing, if we're going to go that route, and our kids are going to be indoctrinated that they're racist because of the color of their skin, I know that's not what's happening yet, but if it goes there, then I can see a serious, serious problem in the community. I've been in this community for 20 years. I don't know what racist is. I am not a racist. My family's not racist. I'm not assuming that any of you are racist. You're all white. So, you know, if you do know what racist is, anybody knows what racist is in this community. Even other people. But don't tell our kids that they're racist because they're white. Dr. Martin Luther King, one of the greatest Americans that ever lived in this country, you know, judge a person by the content of his character, not by the color of his skin. Anybody looks at somebody and says, you're white, so you're a racist, they are, in fact, the racist. It's pure garbage. We don't need that in this community.
I don't have anyone else indicated as wishing to speak, but could you just let us, yeah, we just need you. Are you on the list? Okay, go ahead. Nope, I'm just gonna, Nope, that's fine.
I've been a resident of Dwayne for 30 years. I went to high school, graduated from Dwayne High School, and the things that we're seeing that are happening in the school, things that we're talking about, it's not what we grew up with. It's not the community Waynesburg has been, and we moved back here to raise our families to preserve that. I'd like to touch on the Merry Christmas thing. If anybody's offended by that, take it up with the Constitution. It is our First Amendment right to have freedom of speech. If we're wishing a Merry Christmas, you should be able to do that. And if you don't, then you can just say, I'm sorry, I don't celebrate it, and that's fine. The other thing I'd really like to touch on the quarantine. My son is on his third quarantine, and this time only half of his class is quarantined. I would really like some explanation as to why there's such an inconsistency and we are all over the map. I also, as a parent, do not appreciate the condescending remark to vaccinate my child. That is a decision between his family and his doctor. It should not be forced on by the school. And to be treating him differently because he's not, that's a big problem. And lastly, the equity and equality thing, a lot of us have voiced our opinions on that. And it is a problem if you treat somebody unequally. I agree. But when you have equity, just because they sound the same and they're close in their spelling and enunciation, does not make them the same. And if we want to have equity in the school, it's going to look very different, and we all better be ready to live on $30,000 a year, because that's what equity is. It's making it equal for everybody. And if we're going to teach our kids that that's how it's going to be, who's going to strive to become a doctor? Who's going to strive to become a teacher? They're all just going to get a job working at the local gas station. There's no motivation. On top of teaching your kid that, oh, you're a racist. No, we don't teach that at all at home. Let alone having the school try to slowly increment it with this 34-30 policy. It's garbage. It needs to go. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Oh, head.
Bill Wenzel, we've had children in this district from 1998 up until last June. Very often when kids were in school, we would have assemblies, different presentations, and we would be made aware of the content prior to the assembly. And we were given the opportunity to have our children opt out of those assemblies, presentations, etc. I've been contacted by a number of people in the community who have made me aware of this critical race theory, for lack of a better term, assembly that occurred a week and a half ago. And I would like to know, is the board contemplating sending out notifications to parents to make them aware of it? Because others have spoken in here, I will speak on my behalf. If we still had students in school, no way would I want that type of teaching to go on with them. That takes place in the home. And in my experience, 30 plus years in this area, I have not known of any cases, any individuals, and I have a lot of contacts in the community, who have had any type of racism. Why stir a pot? There's no reason to do it. So I would hope, to get back to my original premise, notify residents when you're going to address this type of an issue, and give the students the opportunity to have their parents opt out so they don't have to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Oh, you can just let me know.
John Howard. My understanding is that the funding that the school gets from the government comes with some caveats. I believe not saying Merry Christmas, CRT, equity, pushing the vaccine are all mandated from the government in order for the school to receive funding. I think that's manipulation, and I think if we as a community don't agree with that, let's find another way. Because although equity sounds like a good idea, throughout history that leads to communism. Do we want to be the generation that lets our country of freedom and liberty slip into communism that's going to stick for hundreds of years to get out of that? It's happening.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. This officially closes privilege of the floor. We will move on to administrative reports. I believe we have a presentation from social studies. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce Chris Karen. He is my department chair of the social studies department. He's going to cover 6th grade through 12th grade, kind of give you an update on everything that they have been doing from our hands-on stuff in 6th grade all the way to our DC trip that we just took. So,
Thank you. Cool, I feel like I'm underdressed a little bit, but we did have practice today, so, okay. So Social Studies Department, I'm Chris Herron, just to kind of go over a few things that are happening right now. Work for me. There it goes. For 6th grade, archaeology, and I don't know how he's doing it. I'm going to have to meet with Mr. Danapoulos, but they're actually mummifying chickens, which is pretty cool. So they're doing an archaeology unit, and they're going through archaeological digs, going through ancient Turkey, Talahuluk, journal, kind of writing their own about what they're finding and what they're seeing, which is pretty cool. 7th grade has been doing Native American tribes in the U.S. They selected one and did research and found specific items, artifacts, and things native to that group and what makes them ideal to their region, geographically, what ties them to that region, how they adapted, things of that nature. 9th grade and 12th grade, we got a couple different things going on with everything we're trying to do, trying to stay separated and everything else, still trying to share readings and journals and communicate and articulate things that they're learning and finding from certain articles and regions around Greece and leading to the earliest democracies and things of that nature. In 12th grade, you've got a group of senior seminar. Senior seminar is a class that was created a few years ago to help our students prepare for college, where they do applications, they write their essay, they research different colleges, they go on college visits, and all of that to help them along the way. So it's a half-year course that they've been taking in order to get there. 10th grade is my group, that's my AP group, and we did an autopsy on an empire, a gunpowder empire, land-based empire from the 1450s, and what led to their decline. And so kids got to kind of share their artistic ability and some of the disabilities that the empires had leading up to and kind of going through their political and governmental downfall, what led to that, and drawing the comparisons and all of those things. And then, of course, thanks to you guys, the community and the board allowing us to go to DC this year, which was great. Not everybody is given those opportunities, and for this community and this board to support us in that, the kids really appreciated it. We've done it 3 times now, and I would say this is the first time. The kids are always appreciative, but this year especially. Didn't even matter really what we were doing. Okay, I'll learn whatever you want me to do. Where you want me to go, don't care, because they were just happy to be a part of it and have a little bit of normalcy. So the idea of just being able to celebrate and learn a little bit about their history and the foundations of their history was key. So we got to go to Arlington. We couldn't do everything that we normally get to do, of course, because of certain restrictions and everything else, but the kids had a great time. Iwo Jima, we got to watch the parade in Arlington. At nighttime, we did the illuminations tour, so we got in front of the Capitol building, or in front of the White House. This is the White House, this one. And then Vietnam War Memorial, MLK Jr. and Lincoln did all the memorials, World War II, all throughout. We even made it as much educational as we could. We went to Ford's Theater as well, where Lincoln was shot, and they learned about that, got to see all that stuff. We posed in front of the Supreme Court. You couldn't go in, but we at least could pose there, same with the Capitol building. So they got to see all of those things, and the Library of Congress we actually got to go into. We figured out a way to get in there so they could see the Library of Congress, which was pretty interesting. All right. So they had a great trip. They were very appreciative and thankful to the community and to the board, and we look forward to hopefully being able to do it in another 2 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to the superintendent status report and update. Do you have a microphone over there also?
I do.
Okay.
I do, I think. So it's not lit up. So the first thing that I want to do is just address the fact that this community has really been rocked over the last few weeks. It's especially true for the folks in this school district. So our students and staff have really had a difficult time. I know that it's true for our administrators too, that we've also had a difficult time in dealing with the terrible tragedy that occurred in our community. But I did want to thank some people because they really did some exceptional things. When there's a tragedy, it's always one of the positive aspects, I guess, is how willing people are to come forward and help out their school. So first person I'd like to thank is Melissa. So Melissa graciously offered her services to help work with our kindergarten students, so the kids who are most closely impacted by the death of one of their classmates. I don't know how we could have gotten through that first day without Melissa. I know that she was there with Jacob's teacher, and so really I think the staff couldn't thank her enough for the work that she did. I'd also like to thank Laurel Hallberg and Kristen Mills and Dave Presson and Kelly Hotelling and Christina Goebel. That's our mental health services staff, our social workers and psychologists and counselors who've really been working a lot to try to make sure that our students and staff are taken care of. The other people, the kindergarten teachers have been impacted greatly, and I've never seen a group of more dedicated people who are going through trauma themselves, but unwilling to leave classrooms because they know that the kids need them. And so I'd like to thank them for their efforts. The Florida Baptist Church was very quick to arrange a vigil, which I think was absolutely needed during that first week. So I thank them. I'd also like to thank Bernox Westerlo, who not only offered up a psychologist and a therapy dog to come in that next day in school, but also sent breakfast to the elementary school the following week. Gilbert Elementary School. So Gilbert, this is a very difficult. This is very difficult to talk about. So Gilbert Elementary School has also experienced trauma in their community, and so also sent over food for our elementary school staff. The Schenectady County Sheriff's Department and Schenectady County Community Services have also been very helpful. I don't know if you attended the vigil, you know how many sheriffs and other volunteers were there helping make sure that people could get across the street safely. And also Community Hospice and Northern Rivers that are continuing to work with our staff just to make sure that, because things like this don't just end. They're things that are going to linger for a long time to come. And so they're there for our staff, and really couldn't thank these folks enough for the work that they've done, and in addition to the countless school districts that offered supports to our district. And so just thank you. I did want to talk about quarantine just a little bit. And folks who are in the hallway, if you want to, there's seats over here if you want to have a seat. But I did want to talk about quarantine because I understand that it's very frustrating to people. It's very frustrating to me too. It's very frustrating to our school district to have so many students quarantined. Certainly we want kids in school. That's what we've been working for the last 2 years, is to make sure that all of our kids are here as often as possible. So I did want to talk a little bit about our quarantine protocols, and then I'll talk a little bit about why it's different in the high school than the elementary school. And the one thing I'm going to say before, because I understand that it's very frustrating to how board meetings are formatted in such a way that the community gets to speak first, and then I get to speak, and there's no real interaction. But I would tell you that if there's questions that you have, I'm happy to try to address your questions. I can't say that I'll always agree with your point of view, but I will try to address your questions, and I'll try to do it as promptly as I can. So the one thing that I wanted to point out is it is true that if you're within 3 feet and you're wearing a mask, you generally should be spared from quarantines. However, there are certain things that really make it so that even though you're wearing a mask in class and your desks are 3 feet apart, you may still find yourself subject to quarantine. So if you do have close proximity with masks on, close proximity while eating, that's one of the things that could result in quarantine. And some of our students do eat in classrooms, and there's just not enough space to have them 6 feet apart while eating. And so that was a risk going into the school year, and it remains a risk now. Poor mask wearing is also something that does frequently lead to people being quarantined. And so does prolonged close proximity greater than 15 minutes. So somebody was talking about a meeting session where kids were next to each other in the morning. So I will say that it's very difficult to conduct elementary school and not have activities that involve students being near each other for 15 minutes or over. So we really have to weigh 2 things. So we're weighing student safety, and we're weighing quality educational experience for elementary kids. And so we know that elementary school kids can't stay away from each other. And so we can either put people in kind of siloed areas and have them surrounded by plexiglass, or we can try to do at least some of the activities that elementary schoolers need to be doing. Unfortunately, what sometimes happens is that those activities, those morning meetings, sitting on the rug with the teacher, listening to books, sometimes those things, collaborative activities where students have their hands on things and are working together in groups, sometimes those things lead to over 15 minutes worth of exposure and lead to quarantine. Now, if it were up to me, there's no way that I would voluntarily quarantine asymptomatic individuals. I understand and sympathize with all of you who have to quarantine asymptomatic children. I've been there myself. So my son was quarantined several times at the beginning of the school year. It's very difficult. Your life is upended. You have to figure out, who's going to stay home and how we're going to adjust the lives of everybody in the family because of the quarantine. I totally understand that. So the vaccination status, so I know that some people find the reminders in the emails condescending. And I hear that, and I will promise that I will take the reminder out. The reminder was in there because the 5 through 11-year-old is a fairly new development. And so while some of you might be aware of that, there may be some people in the community that were not aware of that, or were not aware of where to obtain these vaccines. And so that's why that link was in there. But being vaccinated is not the only thing that prevents children from being quarantined. The other thing that prevents children from being quarantined now is if they have recovered from COVID-19. So also those students for 3 months after their recovery, they are also not subject to quarantine. They're exempt from that too. So it's not just about vaccination status. The other thing that's really, really getting us is the bus. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the sports and lunchroom are problematic in terms of quarantining. Really, when we went into this school year, we knew that based on guidance from the different counties that we're in, that no health department really wanted any schools to be playing sports this year. And so because we know that that part of school is essential to kids, we knew we had to do things as safely as we could so that we could still offer sports. Unfortunately, though, when a student is playing a sport, they're going to come into contact with each other an awful lot. And so wrestling is one of those sports. Youth wrestling was one that we just kind of put the brakes on for a time. And that's because it's just impossible to safely do that and keep kids, how do you keep wrestlers 6 feet away from each other? It's just not possible. And so we know, though, that if somebody's participating in a sport, they haven't had COVID and they haven't been vaccinated, we know they're very likely to get quarantined if anybody on that team comes down with an infection. So we know that that's the case, and whether we agree with it or not is sort of immaterial. It is the guideline that we have to follow. We aren't allowed to choose not to do that. We have to follow it. The other thing that's really problematic is the lunchroom. So when kids are eating, they're taking their masks off, and if they're within close proximity with each other, we know that that's going to lead to quarantines as well. The bus is probably the most drastic thing. That's because, so when the CDC put out their guidance on quarantines for the departments of health to follow, they mentioned specifically that students were allowed to be within 3 feet of each other in classrooms. Now, they didn't mention that students were allowed to be within 3 feet of each other on the bus. And so the bus is the only thing that's maintained this 6-foot radius, right? So if you look at that student in red, that's the positive case. And if we're looking at a 6-foot radius, all those kids that are colored orange are students who would be subject to quarantine because they're within 6 feet. Now, there's no logical way to explain this to you. I am forced to defend this because I have to follow it. We have been pushing the county to reduce these quarantine requirements all year long. And so every week we talk to people in the county and we talk to them about things that they could do to help us save some kids from being quarantined unnecessarily. So we're going to continue to do what we need to do to make sure that we minimize quarantines. But I will also say that in the elementary school, we have had many more cases than in the high school, many more positive cases than in the high school. And right now, things are not good in the county and in our district with regard to COVID. And so that is why you're seeing, right now, we have probably more quarantines than we've ever had at one time. It's disruptive and it's unfortunate, and I wish that wasn't the case, but it is the case now. And so I'm not going to defend it, I'm just telling you what the case is. I did also want to address the equity concerns that some folks had. This is really, I want to address a few different things. So the first thing that I want to address is that we're doing this equity work not because it's tied to funding. Likewise is true for vaccination. Although schools have been encouraged by public health from the CDC on down to encourage vaccination in our kids, as schools always have been encouraged to, encourage people to get vaccinated. So it's not tied to money. There is a state mandate from the Board of Regents. So the Board of Regents does have some things, but there's also a local need that I want to talk about. So the Board of Regents initiative, which you can find, you can look up their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion initiative and find out what the board has asked schools to do. That's public and it's on their website, so you can see that stuff whenever you'd like. It does not just have to do with race. It has to do with all different kinds of equity, especially here in a fairly racially homogeneous school district like ours. There's still a lot of diversity. There's diversity in terms of economic need. There's diversity in terms of disability. There's diversity in terms of gender. There's neurodiversity, kids with learning disabilities, kids who are just different. And so there's all kinds of diversity in our student body. The other thing is that even before I started here, the staff had identified certain inequities in the district, right? So even in what I would invite you to do to get a sense of some of the inequities is at some point when you're walking around the school to think about what it would be like to travel around this school if you had a disability. So what would it be like to even get into the school, this building, if you had a disability? Certainly, there are ways to do it. It's legally accessible. But does that mean that every disabled person can get everywhere they want to go in the same straight line as everybody else? It doesn't. Also, we know that certain kids tend to not do as well as other kids because of socioeconomic status. So there should be no reason why a student's family's wealth is tied to their achievement on test scores. But if you look at data over time, what you'll find is there very much is some sort of connection between wealth and achievement. And that shouldn't be. So you're right in saying that there's not a lot of racial diversity. But what I would argue with you, some of you who said there's not a problem with racism in the school, I would tell you that the impetus of this particular assembly, the series of assemblies, because they were done at each grade level, so the impetus behind these assemblies was the fact that there weren't just allegations of racist comments made towards students in our secondary school. There were corroborated allegations of racist comments that were being made. So there were students who were saying, yeah, I said that, so what? And so we're talking about students calling other students the N-word in hallways. We're talking about students making people feel bad because they wear certain things because of their religion that other students do. So to say that there's no local problem, or that just by talking about it, we're introducing a problem, isn't accurate based on what I've seen. And I think that if you were to talk to the folks at the building level, they would also tell you of examples where these things are actually happening. Now, to address the assembly, I am going to address the assembly first, but first I want to talk to you about all the things that we've done with this equity initiative so far. So I've, some of the claims that folks make, I find it hard not to take offense to. I'm also patriotic. I am very much not a socialist. I am somebody who very much worked really hard to get to where I am. So I find it difficult to not take offense at some of the things that are lobbied toward us. However, I don't live in a bubble. I understand what's on TV. I know the conversations that people are having. Now, did I have to look up critical race theory the first time someone accused me of doing it? Yeah, I had to look it up because I had no idea what it was. So, but I do take offense at some of these things. So we started out by doing an administrative study where the administration read a book on different things related to equity. Most of these things weren't related to race at all. There were things that you would not even think of as being related to equity. Like when I have a fundraiser and I send home, a box full of stuff and expect all kids to participate in that fundraiser, there are certain kids that are not going to be able to participate in that because they don't have parents who can take it to work with them, or they don't have the money to just do what I usually end up doing, which is buy the whole box of candy myself so I don't have to shill them on to the relatives at the holidays. And so we did an administrative study on all the different ways, lots of different case studies related to equity that might be things that you might not normally think of as being related to equity. We did do an activity last year. It was a PBIS activity where we talked about, we defined the term equity. And this was done by student government at the end of last year. So we defined the term equity and we also defined the term identity so that people could start talking about who they are. Because some people are afraid to talk about who they are. Some people even hide who they are from other people. They hide the fact that they are a different religion or come from a different background because they know that that doesn't comport with the majority of folks. We have been doing some staff development with an organization called Generation Ready. So that staff development focuses, I don't even think that we've talked about race, but we have talked a lot about special education. And I know that this group, Generation Ready, did some walkthroughs through our building. And so what they found, more than things that you would think, like it's really immaterial to me, like the Christmas thing, which I will address. The Because right now, if you walked into any one of our offices, you would see Christmas trees. You would see teachers who are wearing, Santa hats. We do Christmas caroling before the end of break. We have holiday concerts in which all of our students are wearing hats. Not to put her on the spot, but Miss Marvin back there is our principal, and she's very much dressed for Christmas. And I would say that that's pretty true for our district as a whole. So what we found in those walkthroughs were things like, we don't ask everybody tough questions in a class. We don't ask everybody questions that provoke thought. So we ask certain kids those questions, but we don't ask all kids. We're not challenging all kids equally. So actually the first thing that we're focused on right now is how do we make sure that we're asking higher order questions of every kid in that room to make sure that everybody in the room has a chance to critically think and is challenged. Okay, so that's another thing that you might not think of as related to this, but it's very much the work that we're doing. So I did release a statement. We're doing this work in concert with the other 23 school districts in the Capital Region. So we all signed on to a statement and sent that out, I think 2 weeks ago. So it is very much a statement of support, just to say that all of us are working on this. So we're not the only district that's doing it. We're all doing it at different levels depending on our particular place, right? So there are school districts in urban areas that are doing it far differently than we're doing it. And that's just how it has to be. We did do an assembly. So I think that when Miss Marvin started to organize these assemblies, it was hot off the heels of some of these comments that were being said to children in the hallways in the secondary school. And so we very much wanted to address that. And so we did grade by grade level assemblies. In these assemblies, we talked about what bias means and what stereotype means. At no point was anybody called a racist. I actually don't remember the term racist or racism even used in those assemblies. The other point that people were bringing up is, instructing children not to say Merry Christmas. That just didn't happen. So the speaker made an aside comment to say, well, some people choose to say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. But she did it as an aside, not as you must do this. There was even an allegation that I heard that a student was disciplined for saying Merry Christmas. That was the most ridiculous thing that I could ever imagine, is to discipline a child for saying Merry Christmas. As I said, it's very difficult to not notice Christmas in this district. So we did, though, have an assembly that addressed bias and stereotypes. And we are, in fact, going to be reading a policy on equity. So the policy committee has been working on this. It's very much a statement of purpose about making sure that all kids have equal support so that everybody can succeed. That's what we're looking to do. There is no grand conspiracy around introducing socialism to children or critical race theory. So what we're trying to do is make sure that all kids have an equal shot to succeed. And we know that some kids are going to need a little bit more than other kids so that they can succeed. So that is what we're doing with this policy. I would encourage anybody, if you have any questions, I'd encourage you to sit down with me and not make assumptions before you find out what's actually going on. I'd be happy to share anything. There was also a comment made about notifying parents beforehand. There was a notice that did go out beforehand. We didn't explicitly say you can opt out of this presentation, but we don't say that for any assemblies that we have. However, they're your children, and it's your right to do what you please. And we certainly wouldn't want to make people sit there if they didn't want to sit there. So that's what I have to say about our equity work so far. And like I said, I would be more than happy to talk to anybody at another time if you're interested to know about any of these things specifically.
on the agenda to presentation and approval of prior Board of Education meeting minutes. Recommendation of the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the November 16th, 2021 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion? Diane, is there a second? Thank you, Francis. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I will abstain, Celeste is not present. Next topic is new business, Board of Education Standing Committee. I believe Buildings and Grounds, Matt, Francis, is there an update?
Yes, we met last week, and primarily what was discussed was the elementary bus project. The new bus project is moving forward, the architect is on the property. Just expecting a couple things from Jim. Good. And he also, the architect, is going to begin providing us with some recommendations for our project plan. Work on this facility.
Thank you. And I believe the policy committee also met. Melissa, is there an update?
Yes, we met last week as well. We reviewed and put forth the first read of the equity policy this evening. And we also opened a conversation around a request about memorializing important folks in the community. And so we're talking about creating a policy so that we have some specifications around how that kind of thing happens so that it in a reasonable and fair way. So more on that. Yeah.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
The policy manual now exists in board docs under draft policies.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting that will be the new place that it lives, and we'll eventually take the policies off the webpage, and it'll be more searchable for people.
Great.
Thank you.
No.
She'll be 100% at that point too.
But I see your fingers are still moving.
Great, thanks for those. Were there any other committee? I don't believe so. Any other? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to financials. Accept financial reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, budget transfer, ECA revenue status, and treasurer's reports ending October 31st, 2021, and ECA report ending November 30th, 2021, as provided by the treasurer and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Melissa? Will you second for Shane? Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on, accept claims auditors reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the claims auditor's comments on general warrant A17 in the amount of $444,658.40 and capital warrant HP1 in the amount of $50,400 dated November 17th, 2021, and general warrant A19 in the amount of $407,005.65 dated December 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion? Teresa, thank you. Second? Thank you, Tony. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Approve agreements with Cobleskill. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education approve the agreements between Cobleskill, Richmondville Central School District and Duanesburg Central School District for September 9th, 2021 through June 24th, 2022, as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. These agreements shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second? Thank you, Shane. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve agreement between the district and DTA nurses. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the agreement between the district and the Duanesburg Teachers Association dated December 6th, 2021 with respect to wages and other terms and conditions of employment for school nurses and authorizes the superintendent to execute the agreement. This agreement shall take effect on December 14th, 2021 and will be reflected in the subsequent pay periods. Do you have a motion? Thank you, Francis. A second. Thank you, Diane. Any questions or comments?
I would just like to make a comment that, so the nurses are totally invaluable to the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. This is certainly not what they signed on to. Like really ice packs and Band-Aids are what they signed on for, and what they have become is really expert public health officials. And I really can't thank them enough for the work that they're doing.
I was gonna make a similar comment, just thank you for all that they're doing.
Certainly going above and beyond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve agreement between the district and Shellmont. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Duanesburg Central School District approves the agreement by and between Duanesburg and the Shellmont Central School District for services related to transportation dated December 14th, 2021, and approves the payment of money provided in the agreement. Do I have a motion? Tony, thank you. Do you have a second? You good, Teresa? Any questions or comments from the board? Francis?
It says that the service locations will be either, but is there a preferred location?
So, I mean, obviously the preferred location is here, but there might be situations where it might make more sense to do it over at Shellmont because maybe they're doing a training with some other drivers or something like that. So the two transportation directors talk frequently and so can work out that.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on to other. Approved 2022-2023 budget planning calendar. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the 2022-2023 budget planning calendar as recommended by the superintendent and the assistant superintendent of management services. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Shane. A second. Thank you, Melissa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept donation. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the following donation as recommended by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services. And it's a donation in the amount of $2,000 to purchase golf equipment from Jamie, and I'm not going to say that last name correctly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Is there a second? Thank you, Tony. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Agree. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Just making a note, sorry. Approve CSE minutes with the addendum of December 13th, 2021. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept and approve the recommendation of the CSE meetings and their minutes from November 22nd, 30th, and December 3rd, 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. A second. Thank you, Melissa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to personnel. Accept resignation R. Underwood. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of H. Russ Underwood, Assistant Transportation Director, effective December 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Shane, a second? Diane, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Accept resignation R. Hayes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Robert Hayes, Junior Senior Technology Teacher, effective December 10th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Tony. A second. Thank you, Francis. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, approve. Approve appointments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the superintendent and high school principal. ECA appointments are for the applicable 2021-2022 school year. All appointments are employees at will, and the appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school term or year. The salary for ECA clubs, activities, and athletic positions will be prorated based on the length of the season term year. The operation of certain clubs and activities are subject to COVID-19 related restrictions. And as listed, we have Leslie and Megan. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second? Thank you, Teresa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we will move on to discussion. And the topic for discussion today is Policy 3430, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the District, first read. Were there any comments from any board members or questions? No? Everybody was comfortable with what was done? Okay, so we can move it, Celeste, to second read. Next section, information. Everybody excited? On January 4th, there's a board photo. So,
welcome.
I do appreciate the notice.
I have a question.
Yes.
Cut out my crutches.
Yeah, we can do that. We can Photoshop.
I can be seated, all right.
And the other item is the Regents schedule update, and I think we received clarification on that. Were there any questions or anything from anyone? Okay. So, at 7:36, the board will be moving into executive session. We do not intend to return to the regular meeting to conduct any further business. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
A motion.
All right, good. Diane, will you second? Thank you, Shane. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming around.
Thank you.
Change of scenery is kind of fun. We should like rotate.
Rotate around the building?